Well, the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, has released its 2019 Human Development Report. Now, the report states that African countries have made significant strides in advancing human development and gaining ground on primary education and health. However, the report also says that just as the gap in basic living standards is narrowing for millions of people, inequalities surrounding education, technology and climate change have sparked demonstrations across the globe. With us in our Pretoria studio right now is Dr. Ayodele Odusola, who is the resident representative of the UNDP in South Africa. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Odusola, the report makes mention of inequalities in Africa. So firstly, what are these inequalities in the main and how are they being exacerbated?
Thank you very much. The 2019 Human Development Report titled Beyond Income, Beyond Averages, and Beyond Today, Inequality in Human Development in 21st Century, shows that inequality is really rising, and the fact that the reference of inequality across the world in the rising trend of strikes and demonstrations shows that our economic policies are not really working, and the distributive capacity of government in making sure that everybody is taken care of is not seem to be working the way it should be. And on the basis of this, there are a number of things in terms of what is happening. You see a situation whereby several African countries have made tremendous progress in terms of human development. Particularly if you look at the fastest three growing countries in human development indicators globally, they're from Africa. We have Rwanda, Mozambique, as well as Uganda. But if you look at the variations, because the progress is not even across countries, some are really making wave in terms of reducing inequality, like countries like Burkina Faso succeeded in reducing inequality over time. But if you look at countries like Algeria, that's the least unequal country on the continent, compared to South Africa, which is the most unequal country, where 65% of 10%. The highest and richest population is controlling 65% of natural resources, and the lowest, the bottom 40% of the population is controlling only 4%, compared to Algeria, where only 37% is controlled by the richest 10%, and 14% is controlled by the bottom 40% of the population. The key drivers of inequality across many of these countries tend to really focus on the issue of the issue of gender, the issue of ethnicity, and the issue of your parents' income determine where you are in the social strata, which is one of the things we need to really focus attention on in terms of addressing. And again, there are a new development in terms of factors that may drive inequality in the next 5 to 10 years or more. This is what is happening in terms of quality of tertiary education, in terms of access to technology, and in terms of climate change. Climate change is likely to shift in the next 50 years, making people current livelihood to be unattainable, and even shifting people from moving from one location to another because of dryness, because of drought, because of heat wave that we've been experiencing over the years. So we thought that this is something that we need to do in terms of addressing the issue of inequality in order to promote human capability, human opportunities, and human development. Essentially, the real policy anchor, we said it is beyond income, is because one, there are social and political factors that are really propagating income inequality and poverty, and we need to really make sure policies focus on this. It's not only on income alone. Two, it is beyond averages, because we need to focus on the excluded as well as marginalized groups and communities. There are so many communities we have in many African countries that do not have government presence. And in many situations, they are always the hotspot of conflicts and crises. And finally, it is beyond today. Because there are some rising trends in terms of access to technology that is really shifting a lot of job opportunities away. And we don't want a situation whereby a big business comes, creates only 30,000 jobs, but destroyed over 100,000 jobs. That's not the kind of thing we're looking for, but ability to really improve the capacity of small-scale enterprises that have opportunity to generate more jobs and making sure jobs is available for our youth all over Africa. And particularly, when it comes to the issue of climate change, we need to really make sure we develop alternative use of carbon-intensive lifestyle, which we have all over. And we are encouraging countries, for instance, to really make sure the issue of doing away with fossil fuel, focusing on renewable energy, which UNDP is one of the things UNDP is doing across African countries, and particularly in South Africa, where we are supporting South African wind energy to increase the electricity supply, especially to non-grid areas in rural communities, so that they have access to electricity. And finally, we're launching a program on the Youth Empowerment Entrepreneurship Program in order to make sure that many youths in South Africa have access to a job, and at the same time, we develop skills to really make sure they are employable in the labor market.
And then, according to this report's accompanying Human Development Index, Dr. Odusola, Africa has experienced one of the most significant improvements in human development. Between 1990 and 2018, life expectancy has increased by more than 11 years. But worryingly, though, if the current trends continue, the report also asserts that nearly 9 of 10 people will be living in extreme poverty, and that would be more than 300 million of those people living in sub-Saharan Africa by 2030. Is there any way to try and curtail this growth?
Thank you very much. There has been tremendous improvement since we started the Human Development Index in 1990. What we need to do in terms of what governments in Africa need to do is to really make sure that we increase the distributive capacity of government. The issue of the what they call targeted social protection and social assistance we give to people must be given to people that really need it, not people that do not need it. 2, we have to make sure that we really promote the capability of government to improve service deliveries at all levels, including in rural areas. Because once you have a situation whereby the people in rural areas do not have access to quality education, basic health services, and even job opportunities, this is likely to worsen the situation. But our ability to really make sure we really improve the government delivery capacities in rural areas, as well as in urban centers, to avoid urban slums. This is one of the reasons areas where we think we need to really do a lot of things to make sure we accelerate progress on human development. And again, we need to really make sure government focuses on progressive taxation that really do not tax the poor, but rather tax more those that are generating income, especially the rich, and then find a way of making sure there is the effective capacity of distributing the proceed of growth into the development of rural areas, as well as marginalized groups and people that have not been reached with development outcomes.
And then just to finally look at how South Africa has been faring in all of this, we've been dealing with issues of load shedding lately. We've also been looking at a stagnant economy, inequality that is growing. How does South Africa fare?
Well, we need to really make sure this load shedding is brought to an end very soon, because it has serious implications on economic activities all over, in urban center, in rural areas. It has a lot of implication in job losses, because once companies are not making profit, the next thing is to sack workers. I think that should not be done. What we need to do is to find a way of making sure this load shedding is not allowed to continue. Otherwise, it will cripple economic activities and at the same time dry up the opportunities for job creation. That's one thing. And again, when it comes to the issue of access to electricity, this is where people have opportunities to really empower themselves and increase their productivity. Without access to electricity, opportunities for job productivity is lost. And at the same time, once you have darkness all over, there are a number of social ills that can happen in the dark. So we have to really make sure we stop this. Otherwise, the crime rate will definitely increase. In most countries where access to electricity is very limited, crime rate is always associated to darkness. So once we make sure we nip this in the bud, then it will help us to make sure we accelerate progress, not only from the economic side, but in terms of social side of development.
Unfortunately, where we have to leave it. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Dr. Ayodele Odusola, for talking to us about the United Nations 29 Human Development Report, which says that African countries have made significant strides in actually advancing some of the economic and social conditions that we live under. And with that, it is goodbye from us.